Hey there, my name is Bernadette Smith, and I'm a keynote speaker and writer. My pronouns are she and her. Welcome to 5 Things in 15 Minutes, my weekly show where I bring good vibes to DEI. That is good vibes to diversity, equity, and inclusion with a little dash of corporate social responsibility. What I've found is that there are lots of news stories about what's going wrong in the world and lots of negative data, but there are also a lot of things going right. That's what I like to focus on. I search for stories that we can be inspired by and learn from. My hope is to inspire you to experiment with some of these actions and policies to help you build a more inclusive world. In this week's episode, I'm joined by Daniel Downer, senior facilitator here at Equality Institute. This week, our conversation is about Planet Fitness, flexing compassion, Sweetgreen serving up support, rides, roofs, and relief for evacuees, and more. Let's get started. Daniel, welcome to the show. Thank you
Thank
so
you for
much for
having
joining
me. It
me.
feels good. It feels like a family reunion of sorts.
Yes, it is always a treat having you on the show. So, Daniel, what have you been? What's been keeping you busy in this crazy DEI world these days?
Ooh, what's been keeping me busy?
Or
Well,
excited, or giving you hope? Just tell me what you're up to, or share folks what you're up to. I know you do workshops for us, but what else is going on?
absolutely. So I've been leaning really heavily the last year into the mantra of rest as resistance. As someone who works tirelessly to advocate for so many different communities and to really share with folks the beauty and the joy of diversity and inclusion, sometimes it can be a little exhaustive, right? And so I've been really leaning into using rest as a way of prioritizing myself and self care, but also sharing with other folks in various spaces, whether that's nonprofit spaces or even corporate spaces, how prioritizing rest really is part of helping us rebuild, repair, but also prepare for the amazing work that we have ahead of us. So that's been really, really great to take a moment of pause, a moment of rest, but also to encourage other folks to do the same.
Yeah, and I know that, you worked really, really hard for a really long time as executive director of a nonprofit. So it is well-earned
Yes.
rest. And I'm sure that there was some forced rest in part because you lived through Hurricane Helene in North Carolina, right? So there is, I'm sure,
Yes.
some forced rest there as well.
Yeah, definitely, the universe gave a moment of pause, but even in that it was beautiful to have that moment to pause, but then also to kind of reconnect with community, to be in solidarity with so many alongside me in the Western North Carolina communities that have been impacted. And so rest, whether it was voluntary or involuntary, was has definitely been necessary to throughout the remainder of 2024 entering into 2025.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I know, you went through Hurricane Helene, the fires right
Mhm.
now in Los Angeles, absolutely
Yeah,
devastating. So many folks impacted,
absolutely.
so many black and brown families in Altadena in particular losing their everything.
Yeah.
So it's just been heartbreaking. I one of the ways I've been trying to find joy and sort of find laughter in life, despite all of the stuff, is through a stand-up comedy class that I'm taking. And kind of finding
Nice.
the absurdity in things sometimes. I mean, how are you finding your joy and your laughter?
Yeah, I am finding so much joy, really honestly, in community. Uh, Coming from a place, Central Florida, being home and having deep roots in the community was very comfortable. And then relocating to a whole new space, a whole new community was a little bit daunting. But I found so much joy in just connecting with folks who may be similar to me, but also who are different than me. That's been the most exciting part. Is cultivating those relationships and those connections. And I even remember saying to a good dear friend of mine during the holiday season how I was in such a posture of gratitude and gratefulness for those connections in that community because it has made the relocation so much easier. It
Mm.
has made dealing with Helene and just everyday life so much more easier. And so I'm finding so much joy in the community that I'm building around me, that I am establishing here in my new space, my new home.
Yeah, I have certainly found in my past that service brings people together. And when
Absolutely.
we are
Absolutely.
asking for help and we're relying on others and when we're giving generously ourselves, it's just bringing people together. And we need that so much. So I'm so happy to hear that that's been your experience, Daniel. It makes me
Thank you.
happy. I had to because of the kind of absurdity of things of the world. I asked ChatGPT to write some jokes about the absurdity of the anti DEI agendas that we have
Okay.
been hearing about, seeing about clickbait all over the news. I've written about it in Five Things, of course. So here's what ChatGPT's joke is. Some companies are rebranding diversity initiatives as belonging, which is adorable. Like, we're not excluding you anymore. You just belong somewhere else. I think that was pretty good, ChatGPT. Pretty good.
Okay. Snaps.
Yeah,
Snaps for that.
you gotta laugh so you don't cry. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I hope
Absolutely.
that
Absolutely.
one way or another, I hope that everyone gets some laughs this week somehow. All right, well, let's move into this week's good vibes. The first story this week is coming about the Los Angeles wildfires. So, Planet Fitness is offering free access to showers, locker rooms, Wi Fi, hydro massage loungers, and charging stations for residents and first responders affected by the wildfires. So, this is available at unaffected locations until January 15th. Such a simple thing that means so much.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what I find so powerful about this is how it kind of goes beyond the core business of fitness. So I think it's a really great example of how corporate social responsibility in action, using an existing infrastructure to really meet immediate community needs, to imagine how much impact other industries could have if they kind of follow this model. And I
Mm-hmm.
also think it's like a reminder to businesses too, to like the need to think creatively about how they can help in emergencies. So like what if we imagined, if there was, something that happened again, what if grocery stores offered free perishables? What if tech companies did provide Wi-Fi hubs? The possibilities would be endless
Yeah.
when community care is actually prioritized. And so I really loved reading about the ways that Planet Fitness was thinking outside of the box and showing solidarity.
Absolutely. Planet Fitness actually is also super trans inclusive and they have really advocated for their trans customers. I mean,
Mhm.
it's a pretty cool company.
Yeah.
Okay, the second story also comes from the LA wildfires. This is from Sweetgreen, which is delivering meals to first responders, firefighters, and shelter residents. So, Sweetgreen has fast casual salads and grain bowls and stuff, and they're giving out this food and delivering it to all of these folks. And I want to kind of mention this as well. So, in California, many firefighters, potentially as many as a third of firefighters, are actually prison inmates being paid about $5 to $10 a day, putting their lives at risk, fighting these
Mhm.
fires. And so, for folks like that in particular, these fresh meals may be especially welcome.
Yeah, first let's acknowledge the $5 to $10 a day, talk about an equity issue.
Yes.
And I think providing meals is just it's just a small step, and it really helps to humanize what I think are the very individuals who are putting their lives on the line, who are risking their lives while they're also being underpaid. And once again, it goes to the question, as I was reading this, I was thinking about like, okay, what if companies in different industries leverage their resources to support equity in emergencies, right? We talk about like providing meals and shelter, or even free transportation to really make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And you, like you said before, the infrastructure is already there. They
Yeah,
already have these goods ready to go. And in some cases, they're spoiling anyway, right? And so, absolutely, it's just
absolutely.
win win. And it's not going to be forgotten.
No, not at all. Not at all. I think if anything, what we've seen during the LA wildfires, even with Helene here in Western North Carolina, is that people remember.
Yeah.
People absolutely remember. And, if we're talking, corporate talk about profitability, there's a profitability to doing good and doing
Absolutely.
good within the communities that you serve.
Absolutely. All right, a couple more stories from the wildfires. So, Airbnb, Uber, and Lyft are also providing critical support. So, Uber and Lyft are providing free rides to shelters, ensuring evacuees reach safety. Airbnb is offering free temporary housing through its hosts. So, I mean, again, just a few more examples of them using their existing resources.
Absolutely. I think if anything, we've been hearing more and more of over the years, but I've seen increasingly this year is about how transportation and housing are fundamental human rights,
Mm-hmm.
and how having access to that can literally save lives. And, there's been a lot of discussions over the years and throughout the years about, the broader issues around housing insecurity and financial instability that many communities were already facing before disasters, but then after, they face it long after. And so that's why I'm really excited about some of the partnerships that are happening between business and nonprofit, because
Mm-hmm.
imagine again if these type of responses were standard practice rather than just temporary relief efforts. It makes me think about like what policies could companies implement to really create this lasting impact?
Yeah, well, when they do, you can be sure to hear about it on Five Things in
Yep.
15 Minutes. All right, the fourth story this week is from the Human Rights Campaign, whose Corporate Equality Index reported record participation with 1,449 companies participating. These are companies with 500 or more employees. So the thing that's notable about this is that there have been some very public companies who have said, okay, we're not participating in this anymore. Yet
Mhm.
more and more companies than ever actually did the Corporate Equality Index. So that means that 98% of these companies enforce non discrimination policies and provide benefits like gender affirming care, which is now available at 87% of the companies in the CEI. So this is really significant. I mean, it just, I think, proves that the headlines are a bit of nonsense.
Yeah, it sure is. And I think about like for me, I'm a numbers person, and what's really encouraging to me is that thinking about how I think it's like 98% of these companies have non-discriminatory policies. I think they're about 87% of them offer gender affirming care.
Yep.
And I always try to tell people, when you put that into perspective, these aren't just numbers, these are actual people. They represent the change that's happening in individuals' lives. And so I think it's really beautiful to see. And you had highlighted it earlier, Bernadette, about how there are companies who are deciding to not participate in. I think that's one of the things we talk about a lot at the Equality Institute, is how it's not necessarily a one-time effort, or just checking the boxes. It really has to be woven into your company's culture, with your leadership being fully on board and ignoring what I like to consider the headlines or the political pressure to roll back these efforts. So kudos to those who are still staying knee deep in it.
That's right. I mean, and so these are companies with 500 or more employees, right? And so
Yeah.
just by kind of the basic math of, roughly 1,500 companies at 500 minimum employees, and a lot of them are thousands or tens of thousands of employees. I mean, that's 750,000 people potentially being impacted by this. I mean,
Mhm.
that's not necessarily all LGBTQ people, but that's
Right.
before we actually talk about the actual numbers of employees. So it's a lot of people this impacts.
Yes, and I'm so glad that you uplifted that because I think that, one of the greatest misconceptions about diversity and equity and inclusion is that it specifically is a LGBTQ plus thing
Mm-hmm.
or a black thing. And it's like, no, this also encompasses individuals that might be veterans. This
Mm-hmm.
encompasses individuals that might have accessibility disparities or disabilities. And so, yeah, I think it's really interesting seeing the conversations that are coming about as DEI is, being polarized in a way.
Absolutely, it is absolutely. All right. Well, the
Yeah.
last story this week comes from Grinder, which is making its debut in Five Things. So,
Yeah.
Grinder is setting a new standard for family building benefits, covering up to $300,000 in fertility, surrogacy, and adoption costs over 5 years. Employees who are there 18 plus months can also access hormonal health support. So this is pretty significant given that the average company caps IVF benefits at 20,000 and Grinder is 300,000. Wow.
Yeah, so it has, in full transparency, been many, many moons since I've been on Grinder. But I am glad to see Grinder is being highlighted for something so wholesome and so good.
Wholesome.
Yeah, I
You're
mean,
right.
it can be offering, comprehensive benefits like this. I think it levels the playing field for employees, especially LGBTQIA plus individuals who historically often face higher costs for starting families. So
Yeah.
I think this is what equitable health benefits should look like. And it's exciting to see companies like Grindr who are pushing the envelope like this.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And hopefully it's a new standard.
Yeah,
All right. Well, let's move into this week's good vibes to go. My good vibe to go. I'll share mine first, and then Daniel, I'll invite you to
absolutely.
share yours. So, my good vibe to go is to check out Michelle Buteau's latest Netflix special. She's a stand up comic. The show is filmed at Radio City Music Hall, and she's the first woman to film a comedy special there. It's a great show. It does touch on some DEI topics, so highly recommend that good vibe Netflix special by Michelle Buteau. All right, Daniel, what do you have for us for a good vibe?
Absolutely. So, I was thinking about a theme that has been kind of like the cornerstone of our conversation, which is like DEI and where is it headed and how is it going to stand with everything that is happening and going to happen. And so I am newly on Instagram Threads, but loving the journey on there. And I actually shared a thread, 10 easy ways to keep DEI strong, no matter the administration. I'm not going to go through all of them, but there was one that I wanted to really uplift. And these are what I kind of consider to be pro tips for
Mm-hmm.
companies, organizations, and businesses that are still wanting to be intentional and invest in DEI.
Mm-hmm.
Providing learning opportunities. So, offering workshops under themes like professional growth, team building, or effective communication. So, this can include topics that indirectly address biases, but also foster inclusion and might be disguised as what you could call or consider broader developmental goals. So, for example, a tech company offered a leadership workshop framed as building cross functional trust while
Mm.
subtly addressing inclusion challenges. And an action step that I would include in this is partnering with facilitators to really create tailored workshops relevant to your team's goals. So that also includes us here at the Equality
Yes, we
Institute.
can help with
We
that.
definitely know how to speak the language, but also make sure that it is inclusive of everything that you're needing and more. So that's one of the 10 ways that you can really continue to do DEI no matter what the administration is.
Awesome. Good vibes indeed. Thank you, Daniel, and thank you so much
Thank you
for
for having
joining
me.
me today. How can folks
Absolutely.
get in touch with you?
Yes, so folks can get in touch with me on Instagram at daniel.j.downer. The same thing for threads. I'm on Facebook, and my website is danieljdowner.com.
All right. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you so much for being a
Thank you
guest
for
this
having me.
week. Folks, have a great week. And if you don't already get the Five Things newsletter, you can subscribe at 5thingsdei.com. Thanks. Have a great week.